Wow, my drawing style has not changed at all. Oh, hi. So it's the first review Wednesday of the new year, and I decided to look at something a little new. Specifically, I'm gonna look at the new Muppets movie, because I finally was able to see it with a couple of my friends this past weekend. Before I go into my opinion of the movie, I feel as though I need to go into a little background of my feelings on the movie before I saw it. I didn't really grow up with the Muppets. I discovered them fairly recently, I think during high school, and was ashamed that I didn't grow up with them because they're awesome. I've watched pretty much every movie that came out, not necessarily all of the TV movies, but we'll get more into that in just a little bit here. All the movies that I saw were wonderful, and I enjoyed all of the, again, theatrical movies. But then came quite a few TV movies, and those were less good. Particularly The Wizard of Oz, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Suffice to say, when I heard that they were going to be coming out with a movie, I was not overly thrilled. They hadn't actually come out with a movie since Muppets in Space, and while I loved that movie, the things that they came out with in between were, as I mentioned, very subpar. So I was a bit hesitant as to what this movie would be, simply because what I've heard from them lately hadn't been that good. Then the Muppets began posting things on YouTube, and I really feel that this was greatly improved over the TV movies that had come out before. I feel that the Muppets were being able to adapt to this new medium very well. They're still funny, they're still wonderful, so I found myself softening up to the idea of there being a movie, but it was still kind of shaky. Then the trailers came out, and the trailers made me extremely excited to see the movie because none of the trailers really took themselves that seriously. The very first one had you believe that this was a romantic comedy, and then boom, Muppets. And basically the other trailers that were released were all parody trailers, and there was even one trailer where Jason Segel said, "We have come up with quite a lot of parody trailers, and this is kind of weird." And then several of my friends saw the movie, and several of my family members saw the movie, and every single one of them kept saying, "You need to see this movie is great, you need to see it." So finally, this past weekend, I was able to see it, and I had fairly high expectations because of what I've heard. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I wasn't that impressed. And when I say wasn't that impressed, what I actually mean is it was awesome! I think there might have been a little mixed signal in that statement. Seriously, this movie has probably become my favorite Muppet movie. It's surpassed even the first one, which I loved so much. And I think it's even safe to say that this movie has gotten into my top 10 favorite movies of all time. So what is it about this movie that makes it so good? I think a big thing is that they return to their roots, essentially. One of the things that I missed from some of the Muppet movies that came out after Jim Henson died was there wasn't so much of what made the Muppets good in their movies. Don't get me wrong, I loved Muppets in Space, and I even loved Treasure Island, but they were still missing something that the old movies had. I think part of the problem was that they kind of stopped doing that whole breaking the fourth wall constantly thing. I love the idea of breaking the fourth wall, and if you can work it into a movie, I really enjoy it. And the Muppets did that very well in their first few movies. And this movie finally goes back to that, having the Muppets travel by map, having the Muppets collect all the other Muppets through montage. It all just worked so well, but it wasn't always happening the entire time. It wasn't overwhelming, in my opinion. As for other things that make this movie good, Jason Segel and Amy Adams are wonderful in their roles. They're both great actors, and I think they both had wonderful roles in this movie that they performed very well. I love Walter, the new Muppet, who isn't really sure where he fits in at the beginning of this movie, because, as the audience can tell, he's a Muppet. Even though somehow he grew up in the human world. I still don't really know how that works, but then again, you're not really supposed to. I love all the characters coming back. I love the fact that when we first see Gonzo, he's wearing a suit, which is very jarring. If I were to pick something that still hasn't quite been ironed out from the original, it's Eric Jacobson as Fozzie, specifically. He's a lot better than he was in Wizard of Oz, I will give him that much, and I do think that with time he will be able to perfect his Fozzie. Which is not to say that he wasn't enjoyable as Fozzie. As I said, it's better than Wizard of Oz, and I still think he did an okay job. And I know that when Doug Walker of Nostalgia Critic fame talked about the Muppets, he mentioned that he'd be interested in seeing some kind of sequel for this movie, interested to see what they would do with it. Me personally, and what I feel that the movie was kind of setting up, I want them to start the Muppet Show again. I mean, the Muppet Show premiered back in the 70s, and I really feel that they're opening up this opportunity to start it again. I think this movie is a great way of reintroducing the Muppets to the younger generation, and I think what needs to happen, logically, is to open the Muppet Show again. Not only that, but I can think of plenty of guest star hosts that can come in just like back in the 70s. I think they have a wonderful opportunity to bring back the Muppets more than just on the internet. They have the people for them, the people who replace Jim Henson with his characters and Jerry Nelson with his characters, and yes, even Frank Oz with his characters. They have the potential, and I think they need to grasp onto that, and I think they do need to start it again, because the movie was wonderful and really opens up the idea of possibly starting it up again. So that's my view on the Muppets movie and what I want to come next. I'm curious as to what you think, both of the movie, and also if you think that the Muppet Show should start up again. So let me know down in the comments. And this is likely the last video I will be doing here in this room. I am going back to college on Sunday, so I will see you all back in my room sometime next week. Toodles. Is my handwriting actually better?